world. So we saved in perpetuity. So if you're uncomfortable with that, let me know. The Google doesn't really give you a way to create and record YouTube videos without also simultaneously broadcasting to everybody in the planet. So cool. Well, welcome to RailsSchool for our second class on Phoenix. This is cool. We're starting now. We'll go until right at 9 o'clock. We have the noise bridge British lady to remind us what 9 o'clock is. So it'll be useful. And we'll talk about some Phoenix. I put an agenda up here in the whiteboard. And if someone could, during class, log into the whiteboard and watch it and let me know, because if there's anybody watching at home on the Hangout, they will leave questions on the whiteboard or let me know they can't hear me or something like that. So it's useful to have a student looking because my screen will be covered with other stuff. Speaking of that, let's check the Hangouts and make sure that it appears to be working. Cool. So also, this will be recorded so you can watch it later if you feel like.
Where's
the link is right up there. Go away. There we go. Yeah. So, and if you go there after tonight or tomorrow, it'll just turn into like a YouTube video. I think we should. Although we had a, for some reason, last time I taught, it stopped halfway through. So it's the first time this happened. Cool. Oh yeah, and someone joined. Hey. Sweet. So the agenda. So I'm talking about RailsSchool introductions. I do that so I can get a sense of what folks are, and then we'll do a bit of a background on Elixir and Phoenix in a class this size. We definitely do not have to go to the agenda, which is fine. So this is sort of my proposal. So if we want to kind of do some more basic stuff, I'm cool with doing that. If we want to get into more advanced stuff, we can do that too. We can do a little bit of both. But I definitely think we should do a little bit of basics. And then what I was thinking we do tonight is talk about how to build model relationships. Like if you're familiar with Rails or other relational database systems, we're using Postgres or Elixir. So we'll talk about that kind of basic, relatively boring task. That way I think we're building web applications. And in Phoenix, it's a little bit weird. It's a little different than it is in object-oriented programming. And so it's a good thing to kind of look at. I want to see if we can do this in the course of actually writing tests. So we'll also talk about testing in Phoenix. And maybe if we have time, we'll actually make an application that does anything. But just to get in the concepts of what we're doing, we're actually going to write tests, and I think that's a good practice. So, or we might do other stuff. We'll see. So, cool. So about RailsSchool, RailsSchool has been around for 4 years. Who's been here before? Just out of curiosity. Yeah, I think. Cool.
I came the first one.
The first RailsSchool ever?
No, the first this.
Phoenix. Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I was like, wow. We have. I was not at the first RailsSchool ever. Cool. So it's a free programming class that is sort of centered around Ruby on Rails, but we actually do anything that has to do with web or mobile development because those worlds kind of intersect. So we have some classes on mobile stuff. We have classes on JavaScript. We have classes on Elixir and Phoenix, but mostly it's Rails. And we don't teach a syllabus. Frankly, the goal of the class is sustainability for the teachers. We've been going on for 4 years for all volunteer free classes without really missing any. So to do that, we sort of teach things that we're interested in, that are fun, that we're using at work, with fairly light preparation, which gives us the benefit also of being able to kind of be a little bit more flexible with classes and kind of explore things that people want. So it's a pretty cool format. It's been working for us. If you're interested in web development or know people who are looking for a more structured kind of formalistic, like I want to start and like at the end I want to like have a body of knowledge, There's a front-end web development class here at Knightsbridge that he's on Mondays, which I've heard very good things about. And he's teaching Angular now, actually. So it would be a cool thing. It's free, too. Cool. So we are at Knightsbridge, which you guys have noticed is also a free place. They don't charge us. Knightsbridge is awesome. Rent in San Francisco is not awesome. And someone, I mean, someone actually paid for all these things and did all this, which is really awesome. So you should think about making a donation, especially if you come here a lot. You can buy stickers and T-shirts and all kinds of things. But RailsBridge is super cool. We would definitely not be able to do this if it wasn't for being able to have a free space in the city. So, yeah, RailsBridge is great. And this isn't the only thing they do, if you haven't noticed. So you should check them out. Cool. That's about all I have about RailsSchool. So let's do introductions. So I'll go first. Like everyone need to introduce yourself. If you're at home, please leave an introduction on the whiteboard. So your name, and then what I'm looking for is sort of a general knowledge of programming experience, which is not required, and experience with Phoenix or Elixir. And I don't expect anyone to have like 4 years of Phoenix experience, but it's sort of like, how you looked at it, played with it, built something. And then this is important. One thing you want to get out of the class, like your goal. What would you be happy leaving tonight? So I'm Brad. So I'm a self-taught web developer, mostly Ruby on Rails and JavaScript. I work at a company called Koshx Labs. We're a small consultancy in San Francisco. And really all the RailsSchool teachers have been more or less affiliated with, not really all, but the majority of them are affiliated with Koshx, the founder of the Koshx person. And I've been teaching for 2 or 3 years, and I came to work at Koshx to teach on RailsSchool. I'm really excited about Elixir and Phoenix. The last 6 months of programming because I am self-taught, I didn't spend a year in school writing C, and I've been kind of interested in experiencing other languages and other ways about thinking about web development. So I played with Golang a little bit, thought that was kind of cool, but started messing with Elixir and Phoenix in particular, and really kind of I really got kind of excited about this. So I'm teaching these classes as a way to help cement my own knowledge and hopefully make other people excited about it. And also hopefully make it easier for folks to get off the ground. Not that it's super hard, but just figure I might as well pass on some knowledge. And one thing I want to get out of class tonight is I want to learn something. I usually learn something every class. The first class, I think we had a bug that took like 20 minutes to fix. Cool. So.
I'm Rich, and I work at Propeller Labs. I'm a Swift developer, Rails developer. And I'm just really interested in functional stuff and Elixir, and Phoenix.
Cool.
So
I think the functional aspect of Elixir is going to become more apparent. Well, I mean, at least comparing it to Ruby. So it'd be interesting to see what you think. Coming from Swift. Cool. Sweet.
Yeah. I think Swift is cool, and it has some functional stuff, but it's not fully functional.
Yeah.
So I like Elixir that it's really fully functional. And I mean, also Swift is doing stuff on, I think it'll eventually be like a backend language too, but I think it's worth learning this for the functional aspect of it, and being able, I think it'll go farther just because of that. It'll have value.
Yeah, it's cool. It's super awesome just thinking about a different way of programming. I mean, even if like, cool. Sweet.
I'm Charles. I work as a support engineer at a company called Demandbase, which means like, it's a marketing technology firm. I went to Dev Bootcamp, so I know like Rails, but I haven't touched it like since I graduated last summer. So I've done a little bit with Elixir and Phoenix, mostly just with a different Elixir framework called Maru, which was built by like some lonely Chinese guy. It's like based on Grape, and I think like 3 or 4 people have used it. But I did a to-do list app with it, and it's really fun.
Oh, cool. No kidding. Oh, sweet. Well, this will be super interesting though.
Yeah, I'm looking to learn more about Phoenix because it's like what everyone actually uses.
Yeah. Cool, sweet, awesome.
My name is Luke. The only exposure to pizza I had previously is the class that we took with this back here. And I currently work as a volunteer intern for a nonprofit organization. And then I'm starting an apprenticeship with Cautious Labs and Weeks.
I'm Sophia, and I'm learning Ruby and Rails.
Awesome.
So I'm right now working on an app about if I'm going to work in the US, what kind of design to get. So it's basically like a survey like app.
Cool, awesome. You're from France? Yes?
Yeah.
We we employ a French gentleman who just got a visa and also knows Rails.
Oh, nice.
So if you're interested, you can email me through the.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a teacher too. So, yeah. All y'all French people, man.
So you with Phoenix, I'm not familiar with Phoenix since I'm still learning just the basic and how to just play myself with apps. So.
Cool. Well, I think if you're learning Rails, I'm sure you'll see a lot of familiar stuff. It'll seem a little bit weird, but I think it'll be cool. Sweet. And then in the back,
Yeah, hey guys, I'm Tim, systems engineer. Doing a lot of different things, but this is all new to me. I haven't really been around Rails development for a while. Just looking to kind of try something new, get out of my day-to-day.
cool. Yeah, Phoenix is awesome. Who has worked with Ruby on Rails? Just out of curiosity, at least some, like a little bit. Kind of cool. Okay, sweet. I'll probably make a lot of heavy Ruby on Rails comparisons, and I apologize for y'all for whom it's not totally applicable. But I don't know anything about Swift, so you wouldn't want me to make Swift comparisons anyway. But it also makes sense because there is a lot of cross-pollination between the Ruby and the Elixir worlds and the Rails and the Phoenix worlds. So that is one of the things that, frankly, is really attractive about this to me, is because it reduces, having, work with Ruby and Rails every day for a couple of years, it really reduces the cognitive overhead to learning something new. And yet there are a lot of fairly new, enticing, interesting concepts to work with. It's just things like syntax and some conventions and things are nice. It's like they're not, Phoenix has changed things where it makes sense and left things same way where it also makes sense. And so that I like that a lot. Your mileage may vary if you're not coming at it with those kind of preconceived ideas. So cool. So one person who's used. So who has a foggiest sense of Elixir? A couple people, maybe. Cool.
I read the documentation.
Yeah, cool. So all the I'm just trying to think like what kind of mix between like some basic stuff and some advanced stuff and where we should put some time. I think we'll do a quick intro to Elixir just to get a rough sense for folks who are new to it, but not spend a bunch of time. And then we're going to start with an established product, and then we're going to start building some related models. And I think that's a good way to go. How's that sound? Cool. So if you want to code along and you have stuff installed, you can type IEX, and we're getting it into the interactive Elixir shell. If you don't worry. It'll be okay.
And I'm running a mixed test.
Yeah, probably because because you came to the last class, and I think you already have that database.
So I deleted the repository and I got my database.
Yeah.
But it's still good.
Weird. Try like mix echo drop. And then mix echo create or dot create. The other thing you can do is go into the config development file and change the database name to something arbitrary. Just what I did, and that should, and then just do create. And if you still have problems, we'll be there in a minute. So we'll. Who can explain what Elixir is first, real quick?
It's Ruby-like syntax built on the Erlang VM. The Erlang VM is built by Ericsson in the 80s to manage like super high availability, like high concurrency, some like so like to manage phone connections basically. They wanted something that they could update while it was still running. That would never break, like totally. Even if some small part of it broke, it would restart itself and kind of be sustainable, and able to just basically run forever from the time they started it up to now. And I think they had something like 20 minutes of downtime in the like 25 years since they like started it up like Ericsson.
I don't know. I haven't looked into that actually. I should look. Yeah.
I just heard that somewhere. I might have even made it up, but it sounds really cool. So that's the general idea, right?
Yeah. No, that's it's really well put. Yeah. Yep. Erlang is pretty cool. It has some neat ideas that allow it to do these really cool things. Like first it compiles to bytecode like Java and it runs on a virtual machine. So it's not interpreted. So, I think that gives it some speed improvements. It gives it some static code analyzing abilities. So if you're coming from a Ruby background, already that's just some nice things. Here's the funny thing. It's dynamically and strongly typed. You don't have to, it's not statically typed. You don't have to declare ahead of time your types. You don't have to declare the type of the variable. But it has single assignment though. So once you declare a variable, that variable stays the same all the time. So it is strongly typed because you can't actually change the type of variable. You can't change the value of it at all. You can reassign variables multiple times, which you see in Phoenix a fair amount. And I need to explore the details of that, but that's basically reassigning the variable to, I'm pretty sure, a new pointer or something. So that's cool. It's purely functional, so there's no objects. So there's nothing that classes or objects at all. Functional languages are interesting. They allow us to do so many things, and one of the really cool things is they're a lot easier to test because for a given set of functional parameters, a function should return the same thing all the time. Where objects are a little bit messy to test because they contain state and functions. But I'm kind of new to that world, so I don't want to say anything totally crazy. But it certainly is a different way to think about programming and a really kind of interesting way to build up programs, if nothing else. Elixir also has really great concurrency model, and one of the cool things is Elixir has lightweight processes also, and you can combine these two things by having tons of different lightweight processes running on a machine that can all do things at the same time and communicate with each other through sending messages. And that process happens identically for processes on the same machine versus machines on the same network. So this is a really amazing thing. Like we could start up a process on Charlie's computer and he could pass me a message to a process that's been running on my computer transparently in the exact same manner that he would do it running on his shell. And that is pretty sweet. It enables you to do some pretty cool distributed computing. You can also hot swap code, and also finally, I think a really cool thing about Elixir is the let it crash mentality. So normally when you're writing code, you try to keep your code from crashing. Right? You try to predict failure states, you try to code defensively and do all this stuff. But Elixir kind of takes the opposite approach. It's like, you want to try to catch like reasonable errors that you can predict, but if your code crashes, it crashes. And you get to declare supervisorial trees where code can have supervisors that's job is to basically watch for it to die and restart it. And that's how they get that incredible long-term uptime that is able to withstand hardware failures on the same network, which I think is pretty amazing. Elixir and Erlang programs can run in a distributed environment that sustain hardware failures and basically just keep on trucking as if like nothing ever happened. So it's really cool, and it's funny because I think the really neat thing is the problem space these people were trying to solve in the 80s for Elixir is really applicable to now with high availability web services and things like that. So Elixir is pretty sweet. Phoenix is a web framework built for Elixir. It's a lot like Rails. It's different than Rails in some ways. One is it has WebSockets built in. And Rails has WebSockets now too, but they're kind of late to the game, and I haven't heard super awesome things about them, to be honest. But we'll see. So that's pretty sweet. So, or if you're doing anything that's real timey. Phoenix is maybe a solid choice out of the box, actually. It's also crazy fast. When we finished the last class, we returned a JSON response on localhost at 900 microseconds, which was less than a millisecond. And Rails would be probably 10 times slower. So out of the box, it's crazy fast. Everyone's probably heard WhatsApp was built with Erlang. That's the famous case. So see if there are any questions about what Elixir is in Phoenix and why we should care about it and why it's cool. The reason Elixir got invented, the inventor, whose name is Josie, I had that confirmed actually, or sort of confirmed, is on the Ruby core team, or the Rails core team, was trying to make Rails thread safe, and sort of decided that Ruby had no future in multi-thread programming, and played with a bunch of things, found Erlang, and wrote Elixir. Being a superpower person he is, apparently he can just sort of like do that. But Elixir is pretty sweet, and it's getting a lot of interest, and I think it's been pretty fun. I've been building Elixir. I've been building with it for a couple weeks now when I've had some time. I dig it. Another really cool thing about Phoenix is that there's no asset pipeline like there is in Rails, which I personally really like. The front-end build pipeline in Phoenix is all JavaScript based, and by default it uses a build tool called Brunch. But if you are happy and familiar with the JavaScript world and want to use like Webpack or NPM or whatever, or Gulp or Bower or whatever the new hotness is, you can do that really easily. Whereas with Rails, you have to like find gems, cram all of that JavaScript stuff into this like weird asset pipeline that never really anticipated that happening in the first place. So anyway, if you want to build rich client apps in a monolith, then Phoenix is actually a pretty good choice. Seem fair? So now let's write some quick code. So in addition to all those things that I mentioned, Phoenix has, or Elixir has some odd syntax oddities. So we have things like symbols. They're actually called atoms. We have strings. We have integers. It works pretty normally. We can do x equals 2. And it works sort of kind of like a normal program in the language. We don't have classes, of course. We have modules, though, which sort of act like classes. And we can do interesting things like this, though. And this is where Elixir gets a little bit weird, and Erlang. Because you couldn't really... it starts getting a little bit weird when we start playing with the equal sign. And this is because in equals, in most languages, this is assigning the integer 2 to the variable x, either by value or by reference or some fashion, right? It's saying that x is going to contain this 2 thing, or at least a reference to it. But in Elixir, we're not saying that. We're saying we want, in Elixir, this is the pattern matching operator. And what we're saying is we need to match the right side to the left side. If x is undefined, it will actually assign the value of the right side to the left side. If x is defined and they match, it'll work. If they don't, that actually reassigns it, and this is weird behavior. If they don't match, though, which is weird. Yeah. I always get messed up when I do it this way. Yeah. If they don't match, you get pattern matching error. It's a little bit more intuitive when we break out something called a tuple. In Elixir, we also have tuples, which are these sort of ordered sets. They're not really arrays. We also have arrays. They're called lists in Elixir, but they're basically arrays. If you're familiar with Ruby, it's nice and easy to use. We have maps. So cool, right? Some pretty basic data structures. We have structs. We don't have any structs declared, but this would be a struct if we had a user, and then we could give it a map. Actually,
Can you zoom in a bit, please?
I'm sorry.
Can you make it bigger?
Yes, I can. Is that better or more? Cool. Yeah, embiggened. Whoa, everything's crazy. So we don't have a struct, but that would be a struct. So far so good. So let's go back to this weird pattern matching thing that I was trying to explain earlier. We can do interesting things like match against tuples. Cool. So what happens here is it matches against the right side and the left side. Foo matches response because response is undefined. Okay matches okay. If they match, response is assigned. If they don't match, you get a match error. So you see this a lot in Elixir, this pattern matching. And I think it might make a little, at first this is kind of weird, but this will make a little bit more sense. But you can kind of see how already there's some useful semantics maybe for dealing with, web applications, where we're doing a lot of asking for responses and responding based on okay and error steps. Any quick questions about Elixir? Cool. Oh, there's a couple more things, and I'll just point those out as we come into them. Cool. So let's look at our app and let's start building some stuff. Does anyone have any problems running mixed test? I'm going to do this mixed local hex thing because I don't like it yelling at me. Luke, did you get it worked out?
I had to go in and change my database.
Yeah.
I just added a one.
Yeah, that's what I did. Cool. Are you all good? Mix is pretty cool. Mix is it's sort of a tool for Elixir. It combines rake and Rails and bundler commands. It helps us get dependencies, run tests, and run the server. So if mixed test runs, then we're good. So already in this app here, let's take a look at what we've got. Here, this is the GitHub view. So we basically have one model, a card, and this is a server that serves the OEmbed protocol. OEmbed is a way to serve up social sharing information via JSON. So you guys know if you share a link on Facebook or Twitter or Slack or HipChat or any number of services, those services will automatically give you a little mini preview with a picture and some text and things like that, right? And it does this by looking at the meta tags in the head of your document. Well, what it really does is first look to see if you have an OEmbed server. And it sends your OEmbed server the URL, and your OEmbed server is supposed to send back JSON. And all the big social services prefer OEmbed to meta tags. So I just let it make a server. So a card, Twitter calls them cards. A card is basically this JSON payload. So you can think about card as an URL, and it's like social sharing information. The title, author name, author URL. You guys probably can't read that, can you? We already have this, and we'll go into more of this as we build some stuff out. But I wanted to mention that. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a site model to our to our app, and we're going to change it so that we can have one site have many cards. And the point of this is that we want to make the server work for more than just one domain, because Phoenix is super powerful, and it would really suck to have each app running and serving embed things for just one domain, right? Make sense? Cool. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to actually use Phoenix's code generators, which I don't really like to do in Rails programming, but in Phoenix, I've been doing it mostly just so I get the plumbing right and don't get caught on syntax errors. And I'm going to look up the syntax for this to make sure I get it right. The cool thing is it gives you the ability to generate a lot of different things. So we're going to generate, we're only serving JSON here, right? So we're going to generate a JSON resource called site. And I'm just looking at the syntax, because I think I remember it, but yeah, cool. So now we started getting differences from Ruby, where with Ruby we would just give it the singular version of our thing, and it would infer the pluralization, or with Rails rather. Here we're going to manually specify the pluralization. So this is going to generate a bunch of cool stuff for us. A controller, a view, a test for the controller, a migration, and some models. Cool. So let's open the migration. Take a look at it. And I can never remember the exact syntax. I think it's add. I'm going to look at a previous migration. Yeah, cool, add. So this looks a lot like Rails, which is pretty cool. So we're just, I think let's we do something called domain and make this a string. And let's require it. And let's do the same thing for protocol. Protocol would be like HTTP, HTTPS, and domain would be like example.org. So these two pieces of information, we can get a site ID. And for whatever reason, I decided to split them apart when I was messing with this. So to keep it similar to stuff I've already done, we'll split it apart here. Notice, excuse me, on our previous migration, we can create a database index. It's like you would do with something like Rails. So it's pretty cool, pretty easy to do. And we are going to do one more thing here, which is add our foreign key, right? No, actually, we need to add our foreign key to the cars table. Never mind. We'll do that in a minute. Good. Everybody okay in the migration? Any questions so far? Cool. Let's, if you run mix ecto.migrate, it should work. Ecto is the, it won't work, of course. Ecto is the database library we use in Phoenix. It's like active record, would be for Ruby. And now we have one of the weirdest errors that got me in Phoenix is for whatever reason, you can't run a migration before you declare a route. Which, yeah, makes zero sense. So what we want to do is we want to do, we want to open a web router. And what do we want to do here? We first want to do, so I want to look and see what I did over here actually. What did I actually do? Yeah, cool, sweet. So yeah, right. So what I decided to do was to change the routing structure a little bit. Right now, currently, requests to the app look like this. This is what Twitter is going to give us, right? And it's going to get this from a tag in our HTML, where it's going to say embed URL equals, and it's just going to hit that. So what we can do is we can have it say, this, and that's how one way we can separate our routing between different sites. Does that make sense? So because we're not going to specify the query string params here in our route, we're just going to do that. So first we're going to use a resources block, which will automatically generate CRUD-like routes for our app. We're going to specify the control manually. And then we're going to tell it inside, and we're going to provide a block, just like Ruby. And inside that, actually, it's not a block just like Ruby, but it looks like a block just like Ruby. I'm sorry. We're going to say we have a nested resource called cards that's going to go to the card controller, and we only want the show action of that. This should look pretty intuitive to folks who built web apps with Ruby and Rails. If you haven't, this is going to enable routes like /sites/5/cards, where it's going to be the cards associated with site ID 5, I think. Once we define this, we can do mix Phoenix routes and look to see if we have what we think we do. And we do. Look, we got kind of what we got. Look, we got a whole set of CRUD actions for sites, right? Which we don't really want. But then we have this route construction, which is really what we want. Actually, it's not really what we want. It's close to what we want. So I wonder if this little trick will work. No, it won't. I'm going to cheat and look and see how I sorted this out before. Oh, yeah. It should. Site controller. Well, we can just leave it a little bit sloppy for tonight. Yeah, cool. Weird. Everyone see what I was trying to do? We don't need, when we look at the routes for our app, we have a lot of routes related to like editing, updating, and creating sites, which we don't really want to allow, right? We're just doing this nested constructs right now, sort of just to organize our data, right? We don't even really want to expose anything about the site at all. So it's a little admittedly contrived.
Can't you guys change resources?
You know, is that what I have?
That's what I just did.
Let's try that. You don't have the nested one though. Yeah. Yeah, which I'm sort of confused by because,
It looks like the error is that it can only,
oh, get.
Get on the next one.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry, Charlie, what were you saying?
it was complaining like that there was no path to the site's resource, like there was no ID to the site's resource.
Oh, was that, okay, I missed that.
So like, I guess it's having trouble messing them. Yeah, site path is undefined.
Yeah, which,
No, like get my ID, you know.
well, I think it's because the route file broke, actually, is what's happened, because I think this is how it, this is how site path, so site path is being called in the boilerplate controller that it generated for us.
Yeah.
And because the router file isn't compiling.
Oh, I see. Site path. So it's not just the single get by ID, but it's all of them are site path.
Yeah, because it's functional. It's weird. It's yeah. You actually pass in the action to it.
Yeah.
Here we go. This is exactly what we want, except for this stuff. So we have better. We don't have the ID anymore. And so this is going to allow us to accept the URL as a query string parameter per the OEmbed protocol. Just to let me show you real quick. This is actually this will be a good little thing to look at. So this is the current card controller, right? So this is what's going to answer to the show action. So when Twitter comes and hits our site, this is what they're going to hit. You notice the show, which looks a lot like Rails. Notice we're passing two things into show. The first is con, which is a struct that contains all of the information related to our current connection. There's no magic sharing of state. There's nothing being injected into this controller that represents the current request. It's being transparently passed into our function. Now we have a map. And this is the cool thing. This map is going to be matched against our incoming params. So this is going to do two things at the same time. First, it's going to make sure we have an URL query param. If it doesn't, this is going to throw, for better or worse. Also, it's going to assign the value of URL. So I can be sure that I always have URL here. So that's kind of, like, that right there is something that, like, it's much more elegant than it is in most object-oriented programming frameworks. Then I want to look up the card, right? I'm using repo, which is basically our database accessing module. I'm using the get by function. I am passing in the module that we're looking at, and then a map with the field and the value. If you're coming from Rails, you would expect this to be like, right? But remember, card isn't a class or an object. It's a module. And the more functional way to do this is to provide a function that takes the card as a parameter and returns. And this in dealing with databases, I think is really where, to me, the functional aspect really kind of shows. And then finally, we're rendering our view. So we pass in con to our render function because that's how our render knows what's going on. We give it the name of the view, basically, and then we pass in another map. And this is how we're passing in the card to our view. And if we look at our card view, we can see we're matching here against the map that we passed in. So if we pass in anything other than a card to our view, it's going to blow up. See if I can get that controller up here. Does this kind of make sense? Let's see how the glue is passing here. Controller looks stuff up, calls render. Con is being stripped out, or the argument's being passed to here. one of the cool things about the view files is we get to look at a really awesome feature of Elixir, which is function clauses. Function clauses are pretty cool. In Elixir, functions are defined based on their arity. So in most languages, you define, or not most, but like in JavaScript or Ruby, you define a function based on the name, right? And if you pass on the wrong number of arguments, you may or may not get an error. In JavaScript, probably not. In Ruby, you might, maybe not. But in Elixir, it's very different. You can have the function with the same name, one that takes 2 arguments and one that takes 3, and those are 2 different functions. And this is a big thing that got me early on. You'll be working along, and your code will throw an error. It's like undefined function, like get status /3. The slash is the number of arguments get status is taking. And here's the thing. Most object-oriented programmers like me immediately assume, wow, get status isn't available. I like didn't import some module or something, right? Like, or I mistyped it or something. It's a plumbing issue. And it's most likely not in Elixir. It's most likely you pass the wrong number of arguments. Because if get status is supposed to take 4 arguments and you pass 3, you don't get an argument error, you get an undefined function error. Does that make sense? Because those are 2 different functions. They're not the same function. And that's not annoying, it's really awesome. Because we get to write the same function name and have a nice sort of declarative way to write different bodies of functions to handle different types of arguments. The other cool thing is we can write different clauses for functions that take the same number of arguments that pattern match against their arguments passed in. And views are a really awesome way to do that. So here's a more complete version of this app. This is the view file. And notice how we are defining render twice. But one, the first argument is show.json, and the second is show.xml. So this means in my controller, when I call render and I pass in show.json as a string, this function body is going to be called. And if I pass in show.xml, this function body is going to be called. Does that make sense? Maybe there's a tighter view. Here we go. This is maybe a little bit. Same function. So these are multiple function clauses with the same function. So this is render/2 and 3 function clauses. So I really like this. I think it's really neat. It's a totally different way to think about building stuff. And one thing I started doing, who's used Pundit for authorization in Rails? Sort of curious. Nobody maybe. Pundit's a really cool library that figures out whether a user can do something or not. And the basic bottom line is, in your controller, you need to be able to call a function. You pass in the user and the object, like delete. Can the user delete this record? And your authorization library needs to say yes or no, somehow. Pretty easy, right? Well, it's not pretty easy, but it's pretty clear. So you can use this pattern matching of function definition to do interesting stuff here. So this, I was just working on this, and it definitely needs some work. Actually, hold on. Did I push? No, I didn't. It's been changed, but whatever.
So with those, like the top 1, 2, 3, 4, all be called authorized/4?
Yep. Yeah, there's two functions being defined, authorized/4. This is also authorized/4. This is authorized/3. Which shouldn't be. This is a work in progress. These 2 things are matched against, right? These 2 things are assigned.
Can do that? Can you do all of that in like one of the control flow things?
Like a pipe?
On the COD function thing? You could just check the type, or is it maybe just with?
Totally. I think there are
different.
I think there are a couple of different syntactical structures you can use to express the same thing. I've seen this be used in libraries, but I don't know what's idiomatic. Yeah, I'm happy. It's funny. We could look at some other codes, and I can show you some other examples of pattern matching, and you can actually do anonymous function clauses, which is pretty cool. So if you're passing like a callback into something, you can have function clauses based on the callback parameters that you get. That's pretty neat. Super useful. So basically, site is my like model. This is the action, and then I pass into objects. And so depending on what action, and then I can just add, card here, right, and have this kind of extensible thing. This is the default. These underscores match anything. So by default, you're closed down. So if somebody messes up and just passes in the wrong stuff that doesn't match, it'll go false. And this matches my user, but the underscore means I'm not going to use it. And the compiler knows about underscores, which is nice. So if I didn't have this underscore here, Elixir would warn me that I wasn't using user unassigned or unused variable assignment. So that's also nice. Does this make sense? Function clauses and pattern matching and function arguments. This is a really nice, super elegant thing that I'm just starting to kind of figure out. Well, I'll show you guys one more thing. So I'm returning a Boolean here, right? And then I'm using it, and I kind of want to fix this. So this is going to go on for a minute. I'll try to talk over it. So this is where I'm using this. And I'm just doing a case, like every language has case, but I'm defining two anonymous function clauses based on the return of the case statement. So this is another way to do it. And then there are yet more ways. Does this make sense? Basically, I think it's sort of obvious what's going on here. If the authorization function returns true, we'll talk about, I basically return okay, and then if it returns false, I return forbidden, and then I render an error. Let's go build some stuff though and stop reading code. Does that sound good, or do you guys want to keep reading code? I mean, it's fine with me. I feel like building stuff might do a little bit. So, quick detour on some Phoenix things and Elixir things. But what we were trying to do is we were trying to get our migration to run, if I remember correctly. So let's see if we can pull that off. Yay! Cool. All right, so now we have a card. Now we have a site model, and we probably want to put a site ID on our card model. With me, right? Because that's how we're going to know what cards go with what site. So first we're going to use our generators to just generate a migration, which I believe we can do. Somewhere. So I think it might be just gen migration. Yeah, there we go. So, and we're going to do snake case here. Add site ID to card. So one thing that Phoenix does not do is it does not do the Rails confusing pluralization conventions. Right? Can everyone remember, is a controller in Rails singular or plural? Haha. Plural, yeah, I know, right? But how many times you know that? Because you sat there for 10 minutes. So everything's actually a little more straightforward in Phoenix. So we can generate a migration, and then we can open it, and then we can figure out how to add the relationship. While we could certainly just add, we could just add a site ID kind of manually, and it would probably work. We do have there is a way to do it. So we do add the thing. So we do add site ID references. One cool thing about this,
Reference sites.
yeah, no, exactly. Thanks. This isn't going to work. So I'm going to just look and see what I did. I remember Googling for this.
What was the command you were in?
I'm sorry?
What was the command you were in?
To do the migration?
Mix ecto.gen.migration.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Cool. So it's slightly more involved. Alter table, cards, do. And then, yeah, why not? On delete, delete all, because that should be a database thing anyway, right? And then let's create an index. You should always index your databases on foreign keys. Notice this is really similar to Rails. And one of the interesting things about Elixir is there is metaprogramming. So we can kind of create DSLs. If you're not familiar with the DSL, it's a Ruby thing. It's called a domain-specific language, which allows you to kind of declare sort of special syntax to be used in different contexts. It's heavily used in Ruby, maybe to the detriment of it. I'm not really sure. But this alter table business is coming from some metaprogramming magic. And this is not going to work since I misspelled it. Sounds like people are typing here. Just fine. Cool. Let's see if we can. Yeah, I bet I did that wrong. But I always do that. No. Whoa, relation post does not exist. Because I'm an idiot. That's what you get when you copy code. Hello. Cool. So we have a database relationship. Let's work on our model. How's that sound? Cool. So we, I think, plan of action. We're gonna need to modify both the card and the site model, and then we want to start actually using these. So let's build out some actual tests for the site model, because that's something that we, and we won't worry about tests for the card. Seem good? So let's open the card model up, because we have that already. It's going to be in the web models folder.
Can you go back to your population?
Yep. This arcane way of opening things. It's annoying.
I'm just looking at the repo.
Um,
I'm getting an error for the create. Oh,
yeah, did you do underscore?
yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I did that at first too. If you want to do it from Rails.
Good, thanks.
Yeah, cool. Sweet. So this is our cars model. For those of you who are new, one thing you'll know is we are specifying the schema in the model file, which is new and interesting. Documentation is a first-class language feature of Elixir, which is awesome. So these are documentations. And these at variables, these are called module attributes. So they're sort of kind of like class variables. So it should be pretty obvious what required fields and optional fields are supposed to be. Let's do a quick look at this change set business though. Change sets are how Phoenix handles model validations and any kind of transform of data you want to do around saving of an object. So this is just doing one thing right now. It's calling the cast function, which compares the incoming parameters, the required fields and the optional fields, and throws if we don't have the required fields. So this is basically we're just implementing some required fields and optional fields. And then if a field isn't in either of these, I think it also goes. And this character is called the pipe character. Yeah, pipe is cool. Pipe is basically like doing this. Takes the output of the previous thing and shims it into the first input of the last thing. And you can see we're doing it here as well. By the way, don't do this. I'm serious. Not that it's super dangerous, but I did it for instruction's sake. If you start building things with Phoenix and you run into like people like, oh, you need to define a poison encoder in your model, you probably don't want to do this. This is defining the JSON serialization behavior. And I think and agree with people that it's a smell to define JSON serialization in your model that belongs in views. So if you have a problem with JSON serialization, it's because you're not properly passing the data through a view. But for the purpose of the tutorial, I wanted to talk about how you can implement custom protocols. And it solves the problem. So cool. So let's change this card model. And again, I forget exactly what the syntax here is. But we're going to add something basically in the schema block just to let it know about the foreign key relationship. Then it's simply that. So I decided to put it at the top, belongs to site, and then we give it the actual full namespace module that it should be looking for. And then site, here I'll put that up for you guys. And then we just do has many cards. So that's pretty easy, pretty Railsy. Except we do it in the schema thing, which is kind of weird. So so if you're going to the sites, what we have to do is we have to add our schema block. I just usually do this. Load up so you can see. Oh, whoa. And you see the default, the generated model file is pretty minimal. I'm gonna get a quick drink of water and use the restroom while I'm taking. I'll do that. All right, everybody good? I can look to see if I actually had you type the right thing. That has many cars. Yep, cool. Sweet. Okay, so that's all the plumbing we have to do for a relationship. Sorry. Makes sense so far? Pretty easy stuff, right? Let's look and see how we can use these. Whoop. What does it want me to say? Good, we're still alive. So I think a good way to play with this is in the context of a test file. So let's see. We have a site test, which is cool. It wants to do some stuff about the change sets, but we don't really care about that. Let's see, this is a site, have many cards. Feeling good? Let you guys catch up.
So we only have one site or multiple sites?
Well, we will have multiple sites because site's a table, but a site will have many cards. So each card will belong to one site. Yeah. So the test case will be around one site. You can see how here's an example, like kind of built out test. This is using EXUnit, which is an Elixir test library, which is like adequate, but not super adequate. You can't do nested examples, so I can only do like test. So like my tests are like, because I like to do like, you can think, it's like when the user's logged in, with valid information, without valid information, with what I mean, like testing a real web app. I tend to prefer to have some sort of nested kind of context, and this doesn't give you that. There are some libraries that shim it on. One of the downsides is being on the bleeding edge, of course, and some stuff is a little bit weird. So, all right, let's do some stuff. How's that sound? So the first thing we got to do is we got to make a site, and then we got to make some cards. So our testing strategy is going to be really basic and really brute force right now. We're going to make a site. We're going to make a couple cards for that site. Then we're going to reload that site from the database and ask it for the number of cards, and it should equal 2. Cool, pretty coarse, but adequate. At least for now. So the first thing is how to. Sweet. First thing is we have to make a site. Cool. So this is where I really, really have to struggle to remember exactly what to do because it's a little bit weird. The first thing we probably want to do is we probably want to make a change set. But you know what I think we want to do actually is we're going to do it. We're going to do a little more iteratively. First, let's just get a site in the data sets. Cool. This is one of the interesting things about Phoenix. It does not necessarily, remember that change that we saw in the model where you handed model validations? You have to explicitly use that. You can send stuff straight to the database, no problem. So you got to remember to use change set if and when you want it. I don't know if I haven't decided if this is good or bad. So first we're going to not do it because it's simpler that way. And we're going to drop in a debugger so we can get in the shell and see what we got. Cool. So let's just assign a variable site. Use repo.insert bang. And parentheses are optional, by the way, in Elixir. I think optional parentheses is dumb, so I put them there. Yeah.
What does the bang do?
Bang makes it fail if it doesn't be in, it makes it throw.
Okay, so there's like optionals.
Well, so this would not throw if it doesn't insert in the database. This would throw an error. So this would just fail and keep executing the code, but this would throw an exception. Yeah. And this is Rails. This is like straight from Rails. Like everything you can do in the database in Rails basically has like a bang or not bang method, which is useful because in some cases you want it to stop the world. In some cases you kind of don't want it to. Like if you're seeding the database and like your main user doesn't insert, you probably want to die. But you know, if you're like inserting if you're inserting an upvote on a comment, you probably don't want to like throw a 500 to the user because they're gonna get in there. I don't know. Okay. Cool. So insert here. We have to give it the site, and then we're going to give it a map. If you make your pride the last thing in a function block, you'll never get it. So this test should fail. Let's run it actually, and see if it even maybe it won't even throw an exception. You guys typing? Everyone see what's going on here, by the way? One thing I want to note. See this alias block up here? This lets me say site. Without it, I would have to say, you have to use the full namespace unless you alias it. Repo is aliased for its automatically. Otherwise, you have to do that. If you work in the shell and in the IEX console, and you get errors about not being able to expand structs, it's probably because you're not using the full namespace. So we can do mixed test. And just run one test.
You type to mix text.
Notice it was compiling the stuff that it thought it needed to compile, not the whole world, but the stuff it thinks we changed. No function clause matching. Insert interesting.
Don't need to alias the repo or input it or something?
I don't think, yeah, I don't think so. No, I just, I didn't quite pass it the right stuff. So let's look at docs. Oh, I think that's what I needed to do. Definitely not what I needed to do. I think I'm just forgetting how to use the API. Yay, cool. Okay, sweet. So I was just confused. I'm sorry. Instead of passing the module in and then passing an anonymous map, we're passing in the struct that represents the site. Cool. An interesting thing about Elixir is every module can have a struct that represents it. There's nothing magical about the site struct or the site module where we get a struct for it. Every module can have a struct, whether or not it has to do with the database. So, FYI. Cool. So if we open up our pry here, we can get in here and see exactly what's going on. But since our test actually failed sanely, it looks like we did get something in the database because we got the ban on this. Cool. So we have to do something a little extra to use pry. We have to run our test through the IEX console. This is weird, but it's just what you have to do. And there's a timeout on pry, so you got to throw the trace switch. Cool. It asks you, and then we can see what site is. Yay, cool. So this is the serialized representation of our site struct. And we can ask the repo for all of the sites, and indeed it's there. And we have the site in the database. Super cool. Any questions about that? Cool. Let's move on. So now we got the site in the database, but it's kind of lame because we're not using change sets, and we want to use change sets. Although frankly, in a test, I'm not sure I would, right? Because change sets are validating data, and I know that's valid, but you know, might as well. So let's step it up a little bit here. Change set equals and here is where I'm going to have to reference because I'm not totally sure the syntax of this either. Change sets. Yeah, cool. So we call the site.changeSet thing, and we give it the site struct. Plus a map of the things we want to change. And then we can do just insert the change set. If we wanted to check the validation of the change set, we would do something like, right, and we would do this in a controller. So the change set, you have to ask it specifically if it's valid. So first we make a change set. Annotation spree. Hopefully I got this right. Let's see. Unexpected token. Yeah, totally. Man. Yeah, weird. So the change set wasn't happy. For some reason. Oh, I know why. So for some reason, it seemed like our domain didn't make it from the change set into the database because the not null constraint through. So our database like got mad, like way down there. So let's throw a pry in a little bit higher and see what this change set says. Yeah, look, check it out. We got nils. And I think I know because we didn't do, remember we have that cast thing in there and our optional parameters are, we have no optional required parameters. So our change set is like stripping everything out. So if we go back here and say required fields, that I think this will actually work. Oh, got further. Oh. Yeah, sweet. Phoenix automatically resets the database for us, our EX unit, every test, which is pretty sweet. Any thoughts or questions so far? So now we've got a change set, we've got a site. We can make this a little cooler though. A little more elixified here. You notice the only thing we're doing with change set variable is we're passing it to repo, so we can use our pipe to do that for us. And then we don't need to pass in change set, right? Because we coming from here. So this is, I think, more idiomatic. This makes sense to folks? Think about it like this, being assigned to site. And you can do this pipe on one line too.
Do you even need to do site equals then, if you're gonna pass it in with the file?
We don't, we don't need to do site. Site is gonna be unused in the moment, but we want site for two reasons. One, so we can look at it and cry, but also because we're gonna need it to make cards. Right, cool. So, but this is, you're thinking about it, right? I think. Cool. So that's not gonna work. Sweet. Okay, cool. So now we got this going on. So now we got to figure out how in the hell we're going to insert our cards. So one way is we could just do it this way, you know, except pass in the site ID. But we can do it a little bit better because Elixir or Phoenix gives us this thing called build assoc, which allows us to build an associated record. It took me a little while to figure out how to make a change set with build associated and put it in the database. I'm going to try to remember to do it. So build assoc. So it goes like this. And by the way, we wouldn't have to pipe site. We wouldn't have to use site here. Does that make sense to everybody? I'm just reusing site to for clarity, to your point. So build assoc cards. Let's alias card up here real quick, so I don't have to write it. card debt. Oh, actually, I don't think that's actually gonna work. I don't think that's gonna go. So I'm gonna cheat. I'm gonna look real quick. Nope, I didn't do it here either. Where did I do it? Sorry guys, give me a second. I thought I did it there. Oh, that's where I did it. Yeah, cool. Yeah, well, I think, oh yeah, cool. So the change set gets a map of card data like that. So let's look and see what we got. We need to at least give Earl and card type. So cool. So we take site, we pipe it into build associate, which takes site, the site we inserted plus the association cards. And what that does is it outputs a struct card, right, with the site relationship already stuck in there. And then we pass it the rest of the change set, and then we pipe things into repo.insert. Cool. So we're shimming this build associate thing into the pipeline ahead of what we're doing here. And I think we could do it like this, actually, which is kind of neat. But for today, we're going to do that. And what we can do is we can even assign the put the card so we can look at it and pray. All right, let's see if it works. Whoa. Whoa. And look, we got a side ID on the card. So we did it. Yay. Does that make sense to folks? Kind of, sort of, maybe. It's a little weird. So now we have a card. And I'm not really sure how to. Whoop. Nope. No, I don't. I keep going back and forth on this, but I like things to be explicit rather than implicit generally, and I don't know. I don't like optional parentheses, to be honest. Although I use them sometimes. I just find it like here, it can be nicer, but what's that?
I said we need dropping parentheses to make it feel more like you're just passing around block like functions instead of.
I can see that. Yeah, totally. Yeah, I can see that. I just don't like having to decide like when to use parens, when not to, and it's like, do you want to drop the parens here? I think like, you know, maybe not. You know, anyway. So it's just.
Can you drop them there?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Well, we'll see. Once we get a green test suite, we can start breaking it. Any thoughts or questions? And then we'll go on. And then what we want to do are, so in a really terribly written test suite here, where we should have a site. At this point, actually, let's just collapse this. Pipeline here. So now we're making a site and we're adding 2 cards in. I probably wouldn't do this in real life because it's impossible to read. There is a, do you guys know Factor Girl from PopPop? It's a library to generate sort of test dummy data or insert data into your database for test purposes. And there's a way to do that in Elixir as well, in Phoenix. So I would use that. And you can do this with like 1 line. It's nice. Okay, cool. So we made a site, and now our testing protocol calls for us to reload that site from the database so we can make sure that we actually got the stuff, the relationships in our database, and they're not just being sticky from being in memory. Pull up the number of cards, count them, and assert they're equal to 2. Cool? So let's pull up a site. We can do git, repo.git, and remember we have to do site, and then, so this is going to reassign our site to basically its database version. And now we have to do something kind of funky. I think, yeah. So you can't just pull up the database, the site, and ask it for the cards, like in here, without preloading the association. By default, associations are not loaded in Excel. So you have to call preload on it if you want to do it this way. And I do. And then I'm passing the result. I think this is a list, and I'm passing it into enum.count, which is what I need to do to actually count them. Because we can't, of course, do this. Not work. Let's see if this works. Let's take pry off. It might just work. And it doesn't. Undefined function preload 2. That's annoying. Preload 3. This is what I mentioned with that undefined function error, preload 2. I think it's because it takes 3. And I should be passing site into that. So I'm going to cheat again and look. Let's see what I did. See what the answer is.
Thanks.
Yeah, no problem, man. Thank you. Let's see, test model. This is that library I was talking about. it simplifies the code a little bit. Oh. Okay, well, I was doing it that way. See, if for some reason, those just look like syntax error differences to me. Oh, because I'm a moron. I bet that's what it is. So I had sites instead of cards. Card does not have an association cards. Site test 13. Oh. Oh. Haha.
Okay, you know,
You know why?
is it not passing in the right thing?
Yeah, this is returning a card. And then I tried to build the card association on it. Not working. But I think this will work from here though.
URL has to be unique.
Yeah. Thank you. Cool. Sweet. It failed because I'm an idiot. 2 does not equal true. Yeah, I had this. Which is never going to work, but I think we got it. Yeah, cool. Sweet. So I think I can do this and tighten it up a little bit. Here. Huh. So working for you guys?
Yeah.
Cool. So this is, this is kind of it. This is how to create and query relationships. The other thing to note is this is a really good blog post by the founder of the Elixir. You might not want to preload everything, right? Especially if you're doing fairly complicated queries. You just like preload all your associations. That might not be a very performant thing to do. In Rails and Accurate Record, it's really, really good at figuring out what you're actually trying to do and writing SQL queries that are fairly performant. I don't think this is going to do this in this case. So if you're doing, fairly complex queries, you're going to end up using this kind of query syntax that they have. So I want to note that it's not always just as simple as calling preload on your associations. And I think this is, it is kind of funny. Maybe this is a better thing. Or maybe it's just because, Elixir has in Phoenix is sort of new and no one's invested in writing a good library to translate more expressive code into better lower level SQL. I don't know. Phoenix is in general much less magical than Rails. So it wouldn't surprise me. It's sort of debatable, right? We're supposed to be programmers, we should be able to write SQL queries. On the other hand, it's we're supposed to actually build stuff too, not just write SQL queries all day. Here's an example of an anonymous function body, by the way. Cool. Well, that was pretty much what I wanted to cover. And we're kind of at an ending point. So does anyone have any questions or things you want to dive into? I don't think if we start a new big thing right now, we're going to get to it.
I'd love to, if you did a thing about talking about doing WebSocket stuff.
Cool. I've never done any of it.
Okay.
There's if you're interested in the WebSocket stuff, there are a lot of tutorials out there on building Slack or Trello. There's a really famous one if you do Phoenix Trello.
I tried to go through the Trello one, but it was pretty long, and I was having like, I got so through.
Yeah, I had problems with that too.
That's like
Yeah.
Yeah, I found it to be broken at least a couple places, or at least maybe not very clear on what the state should be in a couple places. As I was going through it, like, couldn't get something to work, and I couldn't tell if it's not supposed to work yet or what.
Yeah, I was jumping back to the repo for it, and there was changes that were made that were just not updated.
Yeah.
If you haven't looked in the last month, look again maybe because the guy like republished it under a different URL and it made it in Elixir Radar and it may have been updated. I also found it like too massive. Also, it's like got all this React Redux stuff in there. Which is but look again. I mean, because there are like if you do like Elixir Chat, Phoenix Chat app, someone's gonna have like the freaking channel thing. I haven't messed with it. I've been frankly focusing on CRUD JSON because that's where I really want to be able to use this for client work. And I don't write a lot of chat apps. I write a lot of CRUD JSON apps. So personally, yeah.
That's cool.
Real-time hasn't been a thing. I actually hope to use this with an Internet of Things project where we're going to take a lot of sensor data and aggregate it and has to handle a lot of simultaneous connections. So it's cool. It's a good use case, and you can see like you've got, you can be reasonably productive in this. With reason, it's not like Rails. It's taken, it takes me about twice as long to do things as it does in Rails. But I'm really fast in Rails, compared to what things were 10 years ago. So, and it's 10 times faster. So. Cool. I'm going to stop the hangout. Any other questions or thoughts or comments? Thank you for coming. Oops. No, stop.